Every time you add a new feature to your product, you are actively destroying it. This sounds completely insane. It aggressively violates everything we are taught about modern capitalism. We are rigorously conditioned to believe that more is always, unconditionally better. More features mathematically equal more value. More value logically equals more sales. It is the fundamental equation of global commerce. It is a lie. A devastating billion-dollar lie. The smartest, most highly compensated executives on the planet routinely fall into this exact psychological trap. They spend massive fortunes building complex, bloated monstrosities that their customers absolutely despise. They engineer their own spectacular demise. But there is a hidden, deeply counterintuitive psychological framework that the world's most elite product designers use to violently fight back against this destructive instinct. We will reveal the exact mechanics of this hidden framework and how it completely rewrites the rules of market dominance a little later in this breakdown. Look closely at the massive graveyard of fallen corporate empires. They rarely die because they simply stopped trying. They do not die from a lack of engineering talent or a shortage of venture capital. They die because they innovated themselves into absolute oblivion. They suffered from a fatal, highly contagious corporate disease, globally known as feature creep. In elite design circles, it is sometimes called featureitis or edition sickness. It is the relentless, unstoppable expansion of a product's scope until it collapses entirely under its own massive, suffocating weight. So how exactly does the well-intentioned act of adding value mathematically guarantee a product's catastrophic failure? That is the exact question we are answering today. To deeply understand this massive corporate blind spot, we have to look aggressively at the fundamental, hardwired architecture of the human brain. The problem is not your engineering team. The problem is millions of years of human evolution. In the spring of 2021, the highly prestigious scientific journal Nature published a deeply profound, groundbreaking psychological study. A team of researchers at the University of Virginia, led by behavioral scientist Lady Klotz, conducted a massive series of experiments. They aggressively wanted to understand how human beings naturally solve complex problems. They gave participants a highly unstable Lego structure. The roof was visibly slanted. The participants were told to make the roof perfectly level. They could either add new Lego blocks to the shorter side, or they could simply remove a single, obstructing block from the taller side. Removing the block was objectively faster. It was mathematically more efficient. The results were completely terrifying. The vast, overwhelming majority of human beings completely failed to see the subtractive solution. They immediately, instinctively added more blocks. They aggressively built complex, highly unstable towers just to fix a problem that could have been solved with a single subtraction. The researchers proved a devastating cognitive bias. When faced with any problem, the human brain defaults to addition. We are biologically hardwired to acquire, to build, and to stockpile. Subtraction requires a massive, painful expenditure of cognitive energy. Subtraction is completely unnatural. Now aggressively apply this fundamental biological flaw to a massive, modern software company. Imagine a highly successful tech startup. They launch a beautifully simple, incredibly elegant product that solves one specific problem perfectly. The market absolutely loves it. Sales skyrocket. The company goes public. They hire thousands of brilliant new engineers and highly aggressive sales executives. This is the exact moment the terrifying J-curve begins its massive, violent descent. The enterprise sales team is desperately trying to close a massive, multi-million-dollar contract with a Fortune 500 client. But the demanding client has a highly specific, very strange request. We will strictly sign this massive contract, but only if you immediately add this one highly customized, incredibly niche feature to the core product. The executive board panics. They heavily look at the massive revenue on the table. They capitulate. They force the engineering team to build the bizarre, highly specific feature. The massive contract is signed. The sales team violently celebrates. But a hidden, invisible poison has just been aggressively injected into the product's bloodstream. That one highly specific feature now sits permanently on the main dashboard. The other 99% of the user base has absolutely no idea what it does. It deeply confuses them. It clutters the elegant interface. It aggressively adds cognitive friction to their daily workflow. But the terrifying cycle does not stop. It aggressively accelerates. The marketing team aggressively demands a new social sharing integration. The legal team strictly mandates a complex new compliance module. The customer support team heavily requests an automated chatbot. Because the corporate brain is biologically wired to add, every single department demands their own specific block be added to the increasingly unstable Lego tower. Nobody is economically incentivized to remove anything. Saying yes to a new feature is politically cheap in the corporate boardroom. It makes executives feel highly productive. It creates the dangerous, intoxicating illusion of forward momentum. But the ultimate result is an absolute operational catastrophe. Let us look closely at the most famous, highly devastating example of this exact phenomenon in the history of the modern internet. The brutal, unforgiving search engine wars of the late 1990s. In 1998, Yahoo was the absolute, undisputed king of the digital world. They were a massive, multi-billion-dollar juggernaut. But they were deeply, hopelessly infected with terminal feature creep. If you strictly look at the Yahoo homepage from that era, it is a terrifying, highly claustrophobic nightmare. It is completely suffocated by dense, aggressively flashing links. Yahoo executives relentlessly believed they had to provide absolutely everything to everyone. They added a complex weather portal. They added an aggressive financial stock ticker. They added a highly convoluted dating service, massive news aggregates, local sports scores, and endless, highly intrusive banner advertisements. The user was completely paralyzed. The cognitive load required simply to navigate the page was absolutely immense. Yahoo had completely forgotten their core, fundamental job. Then two brilliant PhD students from Stanford launched a deeply rebellious, highly counterintuitive product. Google. When you navigated to the Google homepage in 1998, there was absolutely nothing there. It was a completely blank, highly intimidating expanse of pure white space. There was only a single, simple, highly elegant search bar. There was no weather. There were absolutely no sports scores. There were zero flashing advertisements. The media heavily mocked them. Traditional business analysts confidently predicted their immediate, spectacular bankruptcy. How could a completely empty page aggressively compete with the massive, feature-rich powerhouse of Yahoo? Because Google deeply understood the profound, unshakable physics of human attention. They ruthlessly understood that the user did not want a crowded, screaming digital shopping mall. The user strictly wanted an immediate, frictionless answer to a specific question. By aggressively stripping away absolutely every single non-essential element, Google completely removed the cognitive friction. They mathematically weaponized subtraction. The results were catastrophic for the legacy incumbents. Google completely obliterated Yahoo. They annihilated the heavily cluttered portals of AOL and MSN. They systematically conquered the entire global internet not by aggressively building more features, but by fiercely, violently offering less. This brings us to the ultimate, highly guarded strategic revelation. The massive aha moment that elite product managers deeply internalize. The true, hidden cost of a new feature is absolutely never just the initial development time. The true cost is the permanent, violently compounding complexity tax. Every single time you add a new button to your product, you aggressively trigger a massive, invisible chain reaction of corporate debt. Your quality assurance team must now rigorously test that specific button across dozens of different devices forever. Your technical writers must heavily document exactly how it works. Your customer support team must be endlessly trained on how to actively troubleshoot it when it inevitably breaks. But the most devastating tax is strictly levied directly on the user. Every new feature exponentially degrades the core, fundamental experience of the original product. It transforms a highly intuitive, incredibly joyful tool into a dense, intimidating, highly frustrating airplane cockpit. The product completely loses its sharp, definitive edge. It becomes a dull, heavy, completely useless Swiss Army knife that technically does 100 different things, but does absolutely none of them perfectly. And that is the profound secret. In the hyper-competitive global market, the true product is absolutely not the massive list of impressive technical specifications. The true product is the complete and total absence of friction. When you aggressively embrace the brutal, highly uncomfortable discipline of subtraction, you do not decrease the value of your product. You completely elevate the core value by finally allowing it to breeze. True elegance in business is not achieved when there is absolutely nothing left to add. It is achieved when there is completely nothing left to relentlessly take away. But actively executing this ruthless philosophy in the complex, highly political reality of modern business is incredibly rare. The absolute worst, most terrifying offenders of feature creep are massive enterprise software companies. Think deeply about the deeply broken, highly frustrating internal software infrastructure of the modern corporate workplace. Legacy human resources platforms are the ultimate, terrifying victims of addition sickness. They are aggressively built strictly to appease a highly complex checklist demanded by detached corporate buyers. They are absolutely never designed for the actual frustrated human being who must violently interact with them every single day. The inevitable result is a bloated, highly confusing, deeply universally hated digital maze. Employees are instantly overwhelmed by hundreds of completely useless, aggressively confusing legacy modules. The cognitive friction is completely suffocating. It entirely destroys team morale and actively damages core organizational productivity. This is exactly why ambitious, highly successful modern global organizations absolutely must entirely rethink their foundational HR technology. You urgently need a digital infrastructure that ruthlessly rejects the toxic corporate philosophy of feature creep. That is exactly where PulseMina HCM completely disrupts the entire enterprise paradigm. PulseMina HCM is fundamentally built on the aggressive, highly refined philosophy of intentional subtraction. It completely rejects the bloated, highly confusing legacy model. Instead of relentlessly burying your workforce in a terrifying avalanche of completely useless features, PulseMina HCM meticulously streamlines the absolute core functions of modern human capital management. It forcefully and beautifully strips away the complex, highly toxic digital noise. Whether it is transparent performance tracking or flawlessly simplified internal workflows, it aggressively delivers exactly what modern business leaders and their employees actually need, with absolutely zero cognitive friction. It is the highly guarded, elite operational secret weapon for ambitious companies that deeply want to successfully empower their massive global workforce, completely free from the suffocating, highly destructive burden of legacy software bloat. Ultimately, the devastating history of feature creep definitively proves a highly fundamental, entirely inescapable law of modern strategy. The ultimate corporate victor is almost never the company that builds the biggest, most complex machine. The victor is always the company that possesses the extreme, terrifying discipline to say no. When you finally stop violently adding to the noise, and you rigorously start fighting for absolute, unshakable clarity, you completely destroy your heavily bloated competitors. If you learned something incredibly new today, hit the like button and immediately subscribe for more elite strategy breakdowns. And let us precisely know in the comments below what massive company's hidden strategy should we completely unlock next.